Welcome to the Multiverse Comics Podcast. On today's episode, we have Scott and Steven and a special guest, Leanne, joining us today. Unfortunately, I'm out of town, but sit back and enjoy. I sure did.
So it's probably a good idea to say that it's not just you and me tonight, Ducky.
It is not. Once again, Jason is on a trip in a car a week after his birthday. And, you know, as much as we enjoy each other's company, like I said, you know, Scott and Steven in the morning, night, cats and kittens, I have wanted to bring different guest stars on.
Yes.
From time to time. There's a list
It's
of
something
people.
we're very laxing in.
It is.
Yes.
It is. And the fact that most guest stars want money is also a
There's
issue.
no money?
There's absolutely no money. I know. I finally got to schedule time with my favorite partner in crime since the early 70s, my sister, Leanne. You know, I've mentioned her many times. She's been my convention-going buddy. We have gone and stood in lines for photo ops.
I've seen some of those photos.
All of our family events are tied to conventions like that. And
Yep.
Welcome to the cave here.
Welcome to the jungle.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me along.
Now, sometimes it's Leanne.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct that sometimes you say Lee?
He does. There aren't many authorized to do so.
Right. Okay.
And-
So that answers that.
I will say this, that came from our father.
Right.
Our father called her Lee a
Okay.
lot of times.
Right.
And you pointed that out. Your friends, when we were at the vet that time,
Oh, yeah.
we're sitting there. It's a very emotional event going on at the veterinarian's office. I'm there for my sister. And I'm calling her Lee, and Lee, just Lee, this, we're chatting. And one of her friends, your guy from GameStop,
Mm-hmm. Charles.
turned around and goes, I'm just surprised he gets away with calling you Lee. And she did exactly what she did with you.
Right.
She quickly,
Yeah, there was a definite kind of drop tone there,
Yeah.
sort of like, I'm not threatening, but there's a subtle warning there. And that's okay, because, that's
She-
what we want.
I will say she's as redheaded and Irish as I know. So, she might put Dennis Leary to shame sometimes. So,
Well, anyway, right. Okay.
Right.
Right. So, we have a very interesting opportunity here. We were just talking about it off mic, because you have some insight because of what you do for a living
Okay. Yes.
in terms of how, because we're recording this in a comic book shop. This is a podcast about all things geek.
Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, we're talking about comic books. So you actually have comics actually sort of come into what you do.
Yes.
How so?
How so? Well, I'm a librarian. One of my, I guess, kind of geek things that I wanted to incorporate, I know that there are kids, not all kids love them, but there are kids that, there's a small section of kids that's the only thing they'll read are comic books and graphic novels. And so when I started in the library, I started acquiring and accumulating and building up those collections.
Okay.
And yeah, and convincing teachers that, yes, that is reading. And
Right.
yeah, so I've got a pretty salty collection of those. And not all, like I said, not all the kids like them, but the kids that like them love them. And part of it was because of you. When I was on the committee and started getting a bunch of freebies at my house, you were looking at them one day and you asked me about this committee. And I said, well, I wanted to serve and it's a volunteer thing. And you picked up one of the books and you said, if there'd been more books like this when I was in school, I think I would have done better in school. And I was like,
she's crying. She's crying because she knows how bad I did in school, unless it was history or band.
I don't think it was bad. I just think you weren't good at the game. That's a different thing. And
It's interesting you should phrase it that way.
yeah, because
Because-
it's
no, you're
it's
absolutely
not
right.
it's not smart, not smart. It's just, can you play that? Can you play that game?
Yeah. Can you traverse that?
Yeah.
Can you get through it?
Well,
So you said that sort of convincing others of the
value.
literacy, legitimacy of it's interesting because the naive part of me thinks, well, surely at this point we know that, first and foremost, you want the kids to be reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then second, when they're reading, because it's a skill, it's not like, I went to school, I know how to read. Knowing how to read and being able to read, I think, are two very, very different things. And you have to you got to work at it.
Word call versus functional literacy.
Exactly. See, I knew you'd have you'd have the lingo, you'd have the jargon. You're not just gonna, somebody who's just starting out like, hey, I want to broaden my horizons. I think I should read more. What do you recommend? War and Peace. Great place to start.
Yep.
No, you wouldn't do that. You might kind of gently go in. I mean, I remember being at school when we sort of covered sort of the first introduction to Dickens.
Mm-hmm.
And my teacher sort of explaining that, like, we're going to ease into this. We're not just going to drop, the big thick ones on you, but we'll ease into this. And if you enjoy it and you kind of get a taste for it, you develop a palate for it, then you can kind of do this and you can go on and that'll be great. And if you don't, well, then what we're going to cover will get you through the exams and then you can go on the rest of your life. Anyway, I'm rambling.
That's okay.
So the naive part of me would say that, well, surely anyone would recognize the value of just, the kids are reading.
I think they're two different things. I think at school, if it's just, hey, check out some books so you can read them, that's one thing. If it's, you need this book to do this specific assignment,
right?
That's where that's where the teachers are like, you have to read a book, not a graphic novel.
Right.
It makes me cringe, but I mean, I understand their perspective because how the teachers are being evaluated, what shows up on their review, they have to show that they're following the curriculum and doing X, Y, and Z. There's not always a lot of room to wiggle.
Right.
So whether they're familiar with graphic novels or not, or see the value in it or not, what they're thinking is, my principal wants me to be doing this. So no, Scott, put that comic book down and pick up this other. You have to read it. You have to read this book for that 6 weeks assignment instead.
Right.
So I think and there are a lot of the English teachers, and I say English teachers because that's usually who assigns it. A lot of them don't read the graphic novels.
Sure.
But I think some of it is just the pressure that they're under for what they're required to do. But I was able, if the reading requirement, most of the time it was, you have to read X number of pages this 6 weeks. If they picked up a graphic novel, the teacher would be like, okay, well, instead of 100 pages this 6 weeks, you have to read 150 since it's a graphic novel.
Right. Okay.
So, adjustments were made.
Sure.
But I don't think they're all reading snobs and looking at graphic novels and saying that's not really a book. I think it's like, this is what my principal is telling me I have to do. This is what the district is telling me I have to do. So put that graphic novel down for this project and go pick up that traditional novel instead.
Okay, right.
I would like to think that. Now, there could be some that are burning comic books at their house and just hate it and think it's all bunk, but I would like to think that it's the pressure of other things is why they're telling kids not to go for that graphic novel.
And I don't want to derail Stephen because he's going a good pace, but one question, do you remember your first group of graphic novels, the titles, what you brought in, and what they may have gravitated to?
I mean, I stuck with what I was familiar with was Cape and Cowl stuff. I know there were some Superman ones. There's some Batman stuff that was already there.
Just didn't know if anything jumped out to you.
No, nothing really jumped out. I think the first across the board graphic novel mass appeal that everybody says is great is like mainstream. Everybody says is great is Raina Telgemeier's Smile. Scholastic published it. It's probably not something that would be
I'm not
marketed
familiar
here.
with this. Yeah.
I'm not either.
Oh, well, okay. But I feel like maybe 15 years ago is what, graphic novels are okay.
Okay.
And kind of made them broad appeal. It's a cute story. She fell down when she was a little girl, lost her teeth, and it's about how her journey of having her teeth fixed and everything. And it's got the big yellow, you've seen it.
Yeah, probably
It's got the big yellow smiley face on the front.
Okay.
But that's the first, and Scholastic got behind it, and if Scholastic gets behind it, then it's everywhere.
Right. Okay.
But I think that's the first one that really, and teachers recognize that as, this is okay.
Okay.
So
For for Scholastic, now I'm familiar with Scholastic
Mhm.
as a publisher, you know, and
And
there's sort
kind
of
of a distributor too.
yeah, exactly. So do they, can you answer this? Do they take their lead from the education system as to what sort of books that they should be including in their offerings? Or is it the other way around? Do people in education look to Scholastic like, oh, they vetted this, so I guess it's okay?
I don't know. I don't think it's that because that's who does the book fairs. And
Yeah.
you remember the thin paper, the book flyer? You could order the books.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Those-
SRA, or yeah, no, yeah.
You remember?
Did you just say SRA?
I did.
Oh, man. Yeah,
That's
I remember
hardcore.
that.
That's
Yeah, there you
hardcore.
go.
You
Yeah.
remember that too.
I thought England.
I almost stole the whole SRA thing in my second grade class because I enjoyed it so much and wanted to keep working on it. And I didn't understand that our mother couldn't go to Walden's Books and buy one. So I was going to take it home at the end of the summer. I put it in a grocery bag and I am walking out the door and Miss Brown goes, "Hey, Scott, you can just set that sack down."
Busted.
And I just sat down, took
And
off running, and that was
And you screamed, "Death before
yeah.
dishonor," and just been running down the hall.
Yep, that was no, what a hole. Hurst Hills is pod.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's got to have
concept.
hexagonal.
Portables.
Yeah,
So there's a picture of Smile.
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's all right. I didn't mean to derail.
No,
us
no,
and
no.
that,
That's
but
a happy memory. I remember
Oh,
that.
I loved
Absolutely.
it.
Big time.
Rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But that's okay. No, I think, and there are Scholastic versions of books that are published by other people, other houses, and so that's why the Scholastic version that you can buy on the little flyer that sent home is considerably less expensive than if you went and bought it someplace else.
Right. Okay. Okay.
So I don't know where I don't know who tells them to,
vet what or sell.
and I don't know that they're vetting it. I mean, they're just selling it.
They're just selling it.
Yeah,
Right.
I mean, I guess if Scholastic is a distributor,
but Scholastic, their imprint for Smile is, I think it's called Graphics.
Graphics.
so I
Okay.
mean, that'd be the same thing as, you know, hey, I wrote a book for, you know, I'm publishing it, and you know, Diamond's going to distribute it.
Yeah.
Scholastic majors. It's probably something like that. But
Yeah. Well, it's, you know, we comic books as a, certainly in America, I think, you know, comics have seen quite an evolution. I mean, that's a almost like a stupid thing to say, because I think somebody who has even the most sort of remotest understanding of comics would know that it's gone through many changes and what have you. And one of the things that we have, us Gen Xers maybe, I hate that. We've been around where some of the largest leaps, the sort of intellectual leaps, have occurred. So we've gone away from, you think comic books, you think cape and cowl, like you said, you know, you think of Superman, you think of Archie, you think of something that's very benign and non-threatening and humorous, but never mean, you know, this kind of stuff. And now when you say comics, you have to drill down. You can't just, that's not a blanket term anymore. It can't be. We've caught up with the rest of the world. We've caught up with the European sensibilities when it comes to comics. We've caught up with, you know, the Far East and so on and so forth. So it's interesting that, you know, comics as literacy or comics as a gateway to literacy. That's why I've been looking forward to having you on, because it's, you know, I've been reading comics since I was a kid. I have 3 daughters. Each one of them knows, or we could probably bring them in here and they could tell the stories of me putting comic books in their hand and kind of gauging, like, yeah, that's okay to read. That one, maybe not. You know, I was just talking about this to somebody quite recently. When we were in England, this is my middle girl. She was probably, I think, like 12, 13, maybe. And she really wanted, Amazon wish list for Christmas, you know? And she put this, she loves manga. She's big, huge. Of course, the dream of every comic book fan is you'll have children who will love comics too. Oh, this would be so great. And the child she loves the comics that I enjoy the least, but that's okay, fine.
Well,
she's
she's
Alex,
finding her way.
she's the Alex P. Keaton to my, completely blanked on the parents' names.
I forgot the dad. Yeah.
Yes.
That guy.
That guy.
That
Yeah,
guy.
Stephen
Michael
Gross.
Black.
I think
Stephen Gross.
Stephen
Yeah.
Gross, yeah, exactly. So they're hippies and he's not. Anyway.
Meredith Baxter Burley.
Exactly. Meredith Baxter. Yes.
Yeah, I can speak me good words.
Yes, absolutely.
You're doing great. You're doing good things.
You're doing great. Anyway, so she wanted this. She put this graphic novel on this manga book on her Amazon wish list, and my wife and I were like, okay, we've heard a few things about manga. Kind of vet this a little bit. We take a look, and it said that it was for teen. I think teen or maybe teen plus. And we thought, oh, that's probably. I'm sure that'll be okay. And so it arrived, and we thought, well, we'll have a quick look at it just before we wrap it up. Holy tamale. I mean, that was just a Howard Chaykin-esque excursion into all manner of sexual deviations, what have you. Needless to say, she did not get that for Christmas. We sent it back to Amazon. But that's kind of the challenge, isn't it? Because you don't always know, just like any book, you don't necessarily know what you're going to get. But when it comes to graphic novels, because there's that illustrative element to it, it kind of makes it even more dangerous, or it kind of makes it even more sort of saucy. So I'm very interested to know, like, some of the thinking that goes into what is, what kinds of graphic novels you can have in a library.
They have, well, you were talking about when it's visual, it becomes more dangerous. I don't know if we're supposed to talk about him anymore, but Neil Gaiman wrote the Graveyard Book.
Okay.
And that is...
Oh, we can talk about him. Neil doesn't mind.
Neil doesn't mind.
I'm sure he doesn't mind.
Neil has other issues.
Yeah,
going on.
Neil's got
a bit
bigger fish to
preoccupied.
fry.
All I know now, Mr. Gainan, is I'm not going to get my third section of Miracle Man because no one's going to publish it. I've waited since 1985.
Okay,
Calm down.
that's another podcast.
It's
Okay,
a totally
hang in
different
there.
episode.
Son of a-
So, Graveyard
Don't
Book...
wish you waited like me. Sorry.
Hey, it's y'all show. The Graveyard Book, solid middle grade book, and it's about, I think his name is Nobody, and it's supposed to be Jack the Ripper comes in, kills everybody. It doesn't sound like a middle grade book now that I'm saying this, but comes in, kills the
No.
parents, baby crawls out and goes into the graveyard, and the ghosts raise him. Okay, that's great. Well, when it was a graphic novel and the illustrations that went along with it, like, okay, this is more of a high school, just from the visual side of it.
Okay.
So the full print novel reviewed for middle grade, junior high, whatever. The graphic novels are reviewed for the older because of the visual element.
Right.
So, and we were talking about this earlier, why you choose what you choose. The backbone of most collection development policies that libraries have are the professional reviews. And that's where other librarians look at it. And I look at the age range. And so if the age range is the group that I'm serving, then that's a good purchase for that collection.
Yeah.
And if it's for my group or younger, then yeah, I would, but that's, you're counting on other people looking at, because I can't read everything.
No.
I don't have access to everything.
Right.
And you have to narrow it down somehow.
So you've got, I guess, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. And if I am, you will be the one to tell me.
Sure.
You have a responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And the responsibility is, if I'm correct, is you're sort of skirting this line with like what is appropriate for that setting, for that age range.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the book the Graveyard Book. Okay, you said that it was for
Junior high.
junior high. Okay,
So 12 and up.
12 and up. So somebody has had to get that book. A determination has been made. Hey, this might be a nice thing to have in a school library. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody's had to read that book and go,
Several somebodies.
several somebodies.
Peer review.
Peer review.
review.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. 12 and up. Yeah. We'll go to, preteen, teen.
Mhm.
Yeah. We'll go with that. 8, 9. No. And there you go. So somebody has that responsibility
Mhm.
to look at it and say,
There are journals that collect those reviews, like School Library Journal,
so they have
Voice
to
of
be
Youth
documented.
Advocacy. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, that's interesting.
For sure. And the vendors that we use nowadays will usually have the reviews on the website. They compile
Okay.
it all and curate all that. So that makes it easy so you'll know what to click on and buy and what you don't. For sure.
Oh, that's
and
interesting.
even one of the vendors that I use, it has whatever the book title is, this has at least 3 reviews. This would be an excellent choice. So
Oh, that's interesting.
For
so
sure.
there's some accountability behind those people who have been tasked
Yeah.
with the,
yeah, I mean, there
the
are
vetting or the
Yeah.
review.
And I'll stick my nose in it because this is very similar to an argument we had months ago, not us, about peer review
Yes.
documentation.
Yes.
What I guess she's driving home is that they have printed peer reviewed material that if you come and go, she's pulling up a graphic novel here. I object to this book. She could go to this, well, these 40 people professionally peer reviewed it. Now, how you get to be one of those peer reviewers, we haven't asked yet.
Well, that's not the argument I would have.
Oh.
I would say this falls within the parameters of the collection development policy for this school, for this district.
Okay.
That is why this is here. What you're talking about is, and we've talked about this, let me
Yeah.
jump on my soapbox.
Yeah, but Scott.
Blah,
no,
Yep.
wait. Go
but
for it.
it's access versus morality. And that is the basis of every conflict.
No, right. Here we go.
I mean, my job is access. Your job as a parent is morality.
Yes.
And so when,
Absolutely.
like this here, this says this is for 16 and up. This is the publisher wanting the biggest range as possible so as many people will buy it as possible.
Right.
So the ones that said that the one that came in the mail
Yeah.
that was for teenagers is that they want it marketed to this many people when it was probably maybe a better
narrower-
choice for this many
Yeah.
people.
Yes, absolutely.
But whatever, no matter what I think of it, I'm not the morality piece. I'm the access piece.
Right.
And I mean, I look at it through a school lens. I know we are not trying to throw the wrong thing at a kid,
Right. Of course.
but those are 2 different arguments.
They are. No, they are.
And I can see how excited Stephen is now. This might be the discussion off air too.
It very well may.
He's been very excited for more intelligent conversations.
Yeah.
Some of us can generate sometimes. There's only so many fart jokes I can do.
That's
that,
true. Don't. Look, we are not here to devalue
No,
the power
no.
of the fart joke.
No.
Okay. All we're going to say is that this is a very good conversation,
Yeah.
and I'm very excited to be here. So thank you again for coming.
Sure. No problem.
We're in I had many moons ago when we had our first version of the so-called Multiverse podcast with the old
regime?
the old regime.
I was not a part of that.
Okay. So there was one day we managed to get a whole podcast. I wish some of these were still available because I would love, just me personally, I would love to go back and listen to and see if my opinions have changed on anything. But there was a comic book that had just come out called Batman Damned, right?
The penis episode.
Exactly.
Issue, yeah.
Yes. So in that first issue, the illustration Lee Bermejo, I think it's Bermejo, and it was written by Brian Azzarello. And there's a panel. It's one panel. Batman he's back in the Batcave. He's had a hard day's night. Okay, he's been working like a dog. And he's stripping out of the bat cowl and this as he's kind of making his way to the elevator that will no doubt, when he goes in and goes upstairs, will, open up behind a bookcase in the Wayne Manor Library. Or, you've all seen the show. You know how it works.
Hopefully not the pantry.
Who knows? Who knows? Yeah, well, he might be a bit peckish.
Yeah,
I mean, okay. And he's stripping down. there is, without a shadow of a doubt, he is naked, and you do get to see his full frontal anatomy. Okay. Well, you'd think the universe ended because not everybody, but a large selection of very loud voices went batshit over this. So much so that in second printings or the collected versions, what have you, they've altered that panel so that there's nothing there now, because it was heavily shadowed. So it was very easy to just take, some black ink and just go whoop, and now it's all gone. In that podcast, I was talking to Harvey about this, and I was asking him, as a retailer, how much responsibility does he have, or does he think he should have, in terms of knowing the content of the books that he's selling? And I ask him this because this is a Batman book.
And that's kind of what people are trying to argue now.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you've got Batman, most people, if you asked them, tell me something about Batman, I think in the first half a dozen responses that you get, somewhere in there will be a tether to it being something to do with children, either the TV show or the animated show or superheroes or just what have you.
And
okay.
If I remember correctly, was Batman Damn not the first black label?
Yes, it was.
Adults only?
That's
okay.
Right. And that's kind of what made the conversation, gave it some spark, because Harvey's contention is that DC created this imprint called Black Label, which was going to be kind of take the place of what Vertigo used to be. So these are more mature, more adult, 18 plus age range, not for kids. Let's put it simply, not for kids. But Harvey's contention is that DC really maybe they didn't do quite a good enough job in really hammering it home. Not for kids. Okay. But his own counterpoint to that was he wouldn't put the current issue of Batman in a kid's hand. The regular Batman Monthly, that's not something that's particularly kid friendly. Comics have come a long way since, the Biff Pow sock of the 1950s and 60s when it comes to that character. I'm digressing all over the place. But the point is we're having this conversation about what responsibility does he have as a retailer to know that when little Jimmy comes into the store and picks up a Batman comic, whether or not that is an appropriate Batman comic for little Jimmy.
But do you want the clerk behind the counter parenting your kid?
Right. Okay. So Harvey's response was, just for his sake, he's got hundreds and hundreds of comics on sale in the store. He cannot know the ins and outs of them all. Just like the expectation would be that anybody who works at Barnes & Noble is not going to know.
No.
So some things you will know by reputation. Mm-hmm. Some things you will know because the cover gives the impression that, maybe that's, or the title maybe, or what have you. I mean, when I'm perusing the Criterion collection 2 times a year because I'm trying to take advantage of their 50% off sale, I can see the difference between a movie called Moonstruck and a movie called 120 Days of Sodom. That right there, I kind of know.
But Cher might be in both of them.
Yes, but she's a very versatile actress.
She is.
She's not given the credit. That's another show. So anyway, it was an interesting discussion. So because that's his job, and we know this from history of comic book stores. No, my opinion is, no, it's not the shop owner's responsibility to police this. It's not the shop owner's responsibility to parent.
And I wish there was room in the world, if that happened, if the wrong book got in front of the wrong face, for me to say, I'm sorry your kid saw that.
Yes.
Here, you want to return it and get something else instead?
I'll give you 2.
Yeah, I wish that were the space we were operating in a little
Yeah.
bit more, instead of, oh my God, this is the end of the world.
Well, you
You're trying
can't-
to destroy everything good in the universe.
Yeah, because you can't have it both ways. I mean, going through the history of comics with the whole Frederick Wertham seduction of the innocent, and what came out of that was the comic book code, the Comics Code Authority, which, depending on who you ask, was either the thing that saved the industry or ruined it until such time as the major publishers, the big two really, decided, actually, we don't need to do this anymore because it was self-policing.
Mhm.
There was no government agency that mandated this. But then you have this problem that, well, comics are available to children. Some parents don't want to do the work to make sure that they know what their children are reading. So they're going to rely on person or entity X to do that for them. So if you don't have any kind of rating system on the book, how are they supposed to know? And there are certain creators who have been very, very vocally against putting any kind of warning or rating or what have you on books, because their view is
it can be construed as a form of censorship.
exactly
Any label. There are those in the library community. Just a genre sticker could be they are hardcore. Like that could be censorship because you're trying to influence if somebody picks it up or not, based on your judgment. Is that a comedy book? Is that a romance book or whatever?
No, that's right.
I'm like, I'm just trying to group them all together so it's easier for the kids to find.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean,
that's really all I'm
go to
doing.
Barnes and Noble. I mean, I always make a beeline for the mystery section because that's the kind of books that I like. If you didn't have those placards up, I mean, I'd get lost in there. I mean, trying to figure out, what I'm looking for. But what I find interesting about this is that there's, to the best of my knowledge, there's really is no expectation that you would ever try and apply that kind of thinking to regular books, prose, what have you. It's you don't have that. But I don't know what. Actually, no. You know what? Maybe I got to take that back, because now you have this thing called YA, and I still don't really understand what makes a YA book. I should, because my wife writes the damn thing.
Well, you have someone here that could probably explain it.
What is a YA book? What makes a YA?
For me, age of the protagonist.
Oh, okay.
So if it's the junior high school experience, to me that's young adult. Now there's a lane called new adult. So that's the 22, that's the college, that skews that way.
Oh.
But for me, it's the age of the protagonist.
Oh, okay. I should ask my wife
And,
that question. Yeah.
The high school experience, the middle school, junior high experience.
Okay. See, I think of YA and I think, well, this is just a fancy way of saying this book is written for teenagers. But I see now going by your
Also true.
But, well, no, but I'm just sort of like,
they're both right.
I could be completely wrong there though. So it's like, no, it would be okay for a man in his 50s to be reading a YA book.
Think of Harry Potter. Set aside the creator controversy and all of that. Scholastic started with it. Elementary school,
That's true.
and
Yeah,
as he ages up, there's a point in time where young adult and backwards is appropriate. But I, as an adult, once my sister introduced me to Harry Potter,
Guilty.
She did. She took me to the first part of Deathly Hallows as a birthday,
Right.
because we picked movies for birthday, and she's all excited about it. It's like, this is the first Harry Potter I've ever seen, and she looked at me.
It did.
Like we're sitting in the theater. She looked at me like I took my pants off and started running out the theater. You hadn't seen any of them? Said, no, I have no idea what this is about. Who's the little kid with the stick? And so we,
It's a sad day.
right over here at Northeast Mall. Yeah. Keep going. So I went backwards and read.
Well, yeah, because you were home because you had whatever surgery you'd had, and I you couldn't drive or whatever. You're stuck
Hernia,
at home.
yeah, or something.
And
Gallbladder. Yeah, they ripped my gallbladder.
And I ran into Target and just found the first 4. And I'm like, here, read this like you were 12. Don't read this like sad middle-aged guy that just had the gallbladder surgery.
Right.
Read this like you were 12. And because when I was a teacher in the classroom, that was the first book that the boys would sit down and read and talk about in the corner. And
Right. Okay.
I remember I went to a professional development, and this professor, she passed away. Her name was Terry Lassane. She held up this beat up preview copy of Harry Potter, and she said, this is in the UK. She said it's going to be published in the United States in 6 months, and it's going to be huge. And then 6 months later, it was just Harry Potter everywhere.
And I remember the way you described it to me, you were like, if we'd been kids when this was going on, we would have had Mom take us to Barnes and Noble at midnight.
Right.
To pick
Yeah,
up a book.
that would have been,
And
we would have been there.
and at some point, I think Twilight went through that.
Oh, well, we have to talk about Twilight here in a minute.
Because that was a YA, and when she was in high school or something, and then it got much more adult. So that's just
I hate vampires. Step 1.
yeah.
But you were talking about describing, is this book okay for kids?
Yeah.
If you just describe what happens in Twilight, in my opinion, it is an old guy grooming a teenager.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's it. And
That's
this
Yeah.
whole thing has built up around it. I've seen moms talk about how it's such a great romance to read with their daughters. Like, you need to set that bar a
Yes,
little
it's
higher for your
terrifying, isn't
daughter.
it? Yeah.
I hate Twilight. Let me just say it. I hate Twilight. And that's another one I don't replace because it keeps getting stolen from school. It's gone.
Well, yeah.
And it kind of comes and goes. The kids stopped reading it several years ago.
Hunger Games? Another one, where did that fall?
Hunger Games, I read the first couple.
I mean, was that a YA? Was that?
I would say that's YA because it's teenagers.
Yeah.
It's high school age kids killing other high school age kids. So that's kind of a YA. It leans a little more YA.
Yeah, I just hadn't quite thought about it that way.
We'll just say a prayer for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gosh. But if
Not volunteering as tribute.
if the kids are reading, that's always the kind of thought that I had, is that if the kids are reading, that's
Yeah, for
mission
sure.
accomplished. That's
Yeah.
it. Especially if you can get the young boys reading as well.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was at school in England, there was a book. I cannot remember the author's name, but it'll come to me in a minute, I'm sure. The book is called The Secret Diary of Adrian Mole, aged 13 3/4, I think. And the author, she actually wrote a few of these. Oh man, I mean, this was like contraband in a prison. I mean, it was like all the guys were kind of smuggling this around because it was really funny. But it was a really good, she really tapped into what it's like to be a 13-year-old English boy going to kind of in the modern world. It just sort of ticked all the boxes, really. So if you can do that, if you can, whether it's that or to the other end, which is a similar story, except it's got magic in it, Harry Potter, okay, then that's great. Some kids won't they won't get into reading through books. There'll be another path, maybe through comics, maybe through graphic novels. But if they're reading and you're getting something from it, then it's valid. That's kind of, my parents were very much like that. As long as the kid's reading, and even better if the kid's asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, there you go. I mean, my father we've talked about this on the podcast before. My dad couldn't be more different than me in so many ways, but the one thing that we shared a commonality for was movies. And when I was very young, he would let me watch movies that, you would be like, you let your kid watch that? I mean, okay. But he would let me watch films as long as I could watch them with him. So if I had any questions or if I had any uncertainties or what have you, he would be there to answer them. And that's exactly what I did with my children, which is why my youngest loves telling people that she saw The Wild Bunch for the first time when she was like 6 or 7. Are you familiar with The Wild Bunch, Sam Peckinpah? It's very violent. Let's just
Yeah.
put it that way. Okay. But there you go. But I was there. Like, let's talk about this. What did you think about that? What did you? I thought it was great. I thought it was scary. I thought it was really inappropriate, Dad. And I'm going to go and turn you in, or conversations. But graphic novels. I suppose the struggle point that I have, and this is what we were talking about before I hit record.
Sure.
We're talking about there's this one graphic novel that seemed to appear on
The naughty list?
The naughty list. Yes, absolutely. There you go, naughty list. And I'm trying to, and I've been trying to find out, or trying to get an understanding as to why. And that is Art Spiegelman's Mouse.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, I remember when Mouse came out, 1980s. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It was, I think it was originally serialized in, it was a periodical. I can't remember the name of it. Art Spiegelman he's an American writer. He's,
If only you had a computer and could look it up.
yeah, I know, right?
Like
What we usually say is, if only we had some mystical device that we could,
This is great. It's a great sight gag for radio.
Yeah, it's great.
He wrote it, he drew it, it won the Pulitzer,
Mm-hmm.
and people are talking about it, and it's almost 40 years old, and people are still talking about it. I've read it several times. I had I'm very fortunate to go to an art exhibition in Miami many years ago, where they had not only original art, but also some of the apocrypha that Spiegelman had from his parents, because obviously he's telling their story.
Mm-hmm.
This is their story of life under in Europe under the Nazis. I'm
going to stop.
Sure.
It's called the magazine was called Raw.
Raw. That's it.
There we go.
Francois.
The second issue of Raw.
Second issue of Raw. Okay. I've been to Anne Frank's house in Amsterdam. There's a gift shop. You can buy copies of The Diary of Anne Frank. You could buy a copy of Mouse there as well. Okay. So when you think about stories, books, art, what have you, that covers the Holocaust, covers the Shoah, for me, there's a short list. So you think, obviously, there's Schindler's List. Well, there's the book Schindler's Ark. There's Keneally's book Schindler's Ark. And then you've got, there's a TV miniseries. Meryl Streep is in that, wasn't she? Holocaust? I think so. I think of Mouse because that was I found it a harrowing, very upsetting, very interesting, and a very clever way to communicate some very, very large, very dark ideas about something that happened.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this isn't fanciful. This is history. This happened. Would I let my children read it? Would I let my teenagers read it? Would I let my younger kids, if they express an interest? Oh, hell yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. 1,000 times over. Because it's important to me as a parent, but also as a person who's navigating the same troubled waters that everyone else is. Certain things shouldn't be forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is it about that book now, if you can answer, if you can throw some insight at me as to maybe what somebody's mindset may be or may not be?
I don't know.
You don't know.
I don't
Okay.
know. I
And that's a crazy question. I understand that.
I think there are people out there that don't want kids upset. I think there are people out there that, whatever their views are on the Holocaust, they may not want that discussed. When we were talking about professional reviews, I looked it up yesterday or last night because you had mentioned Mouse. I don't know that I would buy it now because it only has one review but it has won a national award, so that's another consideration.
Okay.
But it is reviewed for 8th grade. So that's when they read Anne Frank.
Right.
And
I told you before, I stopped buying it years ago. It was in the collection when I became a librarian. I stopped buying it because it kept getting stolen.
right.
And I'm only going to buy something so many times and let other people walk out the door with it.
And what's interesting, when I'm looking up Mouse's History of Fine Raw,
Yeah.
and it lists the librarian controversies. And so I just clicked on that.
Okay.
And Texas, Tennessee, Alabama, Florida, all these lists, their objection is inappropriate language. I mean, that's just one.
Okay.
Inappropriate and inappropriate, those are loaded words.
Yeah, that's a blanket way of, is, to me, inappropriate is swearing.
Right.
But for someone else, inappropriate could be.
And what is swearing? I mean,
Yeah,
is it George Carlin's 7 words, or is it?
Or Dennis Leary's 47.
Yeah.
But also inappropriate. There are some people out there that, as we've talked about before, if you're making one group feel uncomfortable, that falls under inappropriate language.
Yes.
So it doesn't drill down any further. I'm not trying to stir up any controversy,
No.
but that is.
Well,
For those of you at home, Stephen has a very focused look on his face.
Yeah,
right now.
The brow is furrowed.
Stephen's mind is like a funnel.
Yeah.
Sure.
So it's packed in with all these thoughts and ideas, and it's kind of being squeezed through this orifice and I freeze sometimes. I'm sure there's probably a pill for this. But I think of Electra Assassin. We go from mouse to Electra Assassin. Why not? So Electra Assassin, this comic series that Miller and Sienkiewicz did in 85?
85, I was working at Fantastic World, and that's where I learned the Bob Wayne marketing tool for how to increase sales on a controversial comic. Because Bob Wayne went on to be the vice president of trade paperback sales for DC Comics.
Yes, he did.
Good old Bertram Wayne. I hope you're listening to this. So Sienkiewicz's, I'm going to just jump in because I've been quiet because I want my sister to enjoy this experience. I know Stephen's enjoying this quite a bit. So when Electra came out, Sienkiewicz's art was so distorted, in my humble opinion. You couldn't tell what was going on most of the time.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And
Fine.
our local paper, 4-Star Telegram, got a copy of it. And apparently there was a panel where Electra is spread eagle. Something's going on, legs up in the air, don't know. And so Bob got wind of that, and he called the paper as a concerned parent and said, "Oh my God, Fantastic Worlds is selling this book, sexualized, oh my God, spread eagle, blah, 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 blah," hangs up the phone. About an hour later, they call him to ask about the parent. And his answer was, "It's a great book. People should learn how to parent their own kids. I don't need to tell you this. This book is outstanding. It's Frank Miller. There's no spread eagle. And he actually said there's no birds in this book." Hung up with him. So he got quoted twice in the same article, turned around and called the distributor, ordered another 200 copies.
Right.
And we sold them all.
Yeah, that's the other thing. As soon as you put that label on something, that's the first thing people will.
Yeah,
that's right.
They come in, and we sold them to a bunch of angry mothers who wanted to make sure no one else got them.
Right.
As long as the check clears.
So, yeah.
Well, so the reason why Electra popped into my mind is that I think it was the first trade paperback collection. Miller writes a foreword, and he talks about somebody. It was like one of the sort of media-driven public morality groups of the mid 1980s, your Tipper Gore type organizations, and that one of them had somebody in one of these groups, a mouthpiece, had said, like, this is dangerous stuff. Like, the quote is something like, "I think we need to protect our children from this." And they slapped this quote on the cover of the trade paperbacks on the back, and Miller I think says something like she dedicated the trade paperback, has a dedication to this person. Like, thank, because what you did, I know what you tried to do, but what you actually ended up doing was pushing our sales through the roof. It's probably quite disgusting to compare something like that to Mouse. But I do wonder sometimes when you have these lists, these naughty lists, and I know what I was like when I was 13, 14 years old. If somebody said to me, especially a graphic novel, if somebody said to me, "Oh, you can't read that. Oh, you shouldn't be able to reading that." Oh my gosh, that's the one I've got to read.
Well, our good friend LeVar Burton's always said, if they make a list of banned books, those are the first ones you should go read.
Oh yeah.
So
no, that's it. So I think that it's a little I don't know, is it counterintuitive? Is it, I don't know. I think about some of the comics I was reading, Swamp Thing, Alan Moore's Swamp Thing, Jamie Delano's Hellblazer. Some of the things that I was reading when I was 13. Like, would I be okay with my 13-year-olds reading that? I don't know. I guess it would depend on how mature I thought that they were.
And one kid would be different from the other. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
It's not that 13 is not a magic number.
No, it's not.
What's right for the middle one might not be right for the younger one.
That's it. But what I do know is that if one of my children really wanted to read it, then I would probably take the same position, like I said, that my dad would, which is like, well, I have reservations, but okay, but we'll go through this together. I mean, obviously there's a limit. I mean, I mentioned Howard Chaykin earlier. I was reading Howard Chaykin's Black Kiss whenever that came out. I think I was probably, how old was I when that came out? I would have been
late 20s.
No, younger. That came out in 89, 88, 89. So I'm 16? Somewhere around there.
I forget you're younger than me. I thought we were closer because 89 for me I'd have been 21.
Yeah, no, I think I was like 16, somewhere around there. I loved it. Would I want my kid 16? No, but again, I don't know. It's a tough one. But the Mouse one is why I wanted to ask, because just what your thought on that was, because like this is, if you want to learn about the Holocaust, there's certain things you should read and watch and things like that. And I would put that in that list. Inappropriate language. I have to do some research on that. I'm curious as to what, as you say, what is inappropriate language? That can't just be vulgarities, surely. I don't know.
And that's probably a Pandora's box that we don't want to open on a podcast.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's because we want to keep doing these things. And,
well, yeah.
And even now, we're not telling you how to raise your kids, folks. We're absolutely not.
No.
Or what to read. Or
I don't want that responsibility.
No,
that's the thing. I wouldn't want that responsibility.
I didn't want to raise mine. So that's, that's.
Well, now, come on. That's
just the way that is. But I'm glad you got to enjoy your time with my sister on these matters because, I've learned, I even forgot that trade paperback thing about saying I would have been more interested at school. I wish I knew what book I was holding in my hand. Because I forget a lot because I got a lot going on.
Yeah.
But it's always fascinating to listen to her describe some of the pitfalls she has to go through. And there's even times when I'm listening to some of this, like, man, couldn't we just throw a good myth adventure book in there? Robert Ashburn's series, get that. Those things that, even though it was written in the 80s, to me, those are, it's wizards and all that used to freak people out about Harry Potter, but this still enjoyable, still age appropriate. There's so many out there I'd love recommending to kids. Peter David's Young Justice runs. But it is fascinating to listen to the other side of, like you learned, didn't know there was hard science peer reviews, which I know is a big thing for you, Stephen.
Yes, it is.
Because that way, the earth is flat. Is that peer reviewed? Joe Bob Jimmy Jones said it is, and so did Jerry Jones. Well, neither one of them know what they're doing, so the earth's not flat.
Be suspicious of people who have, what is that? what is that called when you've got the first initial of your first name? Stan Lee does this all the time. Peter Parker.
Lois Lane.
What is alliterative?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Alliteration.
Lee might know the big one.
Yeah, alliteration's when it's the same salon at the beginning.
So anyone who has alliterative name with a J, you might want to question that.
So for all of you out there, just as serious as struck me, I was just excited my sister showed up tonight. So that's what more worries. And if you learned something great,
yes, we broke this testosterone regime.
we did.
Exactly.
And what I in all seriousness, I've always been very proud of what my sister does and her contributions out to the community. Sometimes that she doesn't like talking about herself or stuff that she does, and she even does pet rescues, folks. She likes golden retrievers. So
What's not to like?
What's not to like? Absolutely.
So, there we go.
Absolutely.
So, are we at the end of this one?
Yeah, we are actually.
Yeah.
So
we're gonna let y'all go.
Yes, and keep reading.
Keep reading, folks.
Read all the books.
Reading is fundamental. I'm lame. That's all I've got.
Thank you for listening to the Multiverse Comics Podcast. If you'd like to come and visit us in our store, we're at the Multiverse in Hurst, Texas. If you'd like to shop with us online, you can do that at www.multiverse.shop. Thanks. We'll see you next time.